Before every season begins, we have a set of expectations for players and teams, and we usually form these expectations based on a combination of prior production, expected growth, and whatever realistic goals most believe they can achieve. Obviously, different players of different statures have different sets of expectations because of the roles that they're in on their teams. Every player's expected growth is different, and every player has a different skill set to utilize out on the court, so when they fail to do what is expected of them, it tends to be pretty disappointing. This leads us to the topic of today's video, where we'll be discussing 7 players in particular that have been a bit disappointing individually this year, with the reasoning obviously varying from player to player. Before we start though, it turns out about 67% of you watching right now aren't even subscribed to the channel, so please, if you enjoy the content, consider hitting the subscribe button, as not only does it help out a ton, but I would also very much appreciate it. Now with that being said, let's begin. The first player we'll be discussing that has been fairly disappointing to start the 2021 NBA season is Blake Griffin of the Detroit Pistons. It's been known that Griffin's best days are behind him because injuries have taken a huge toll on him as a player over the course of his career, but I don't think anybody expected his production to fall off quite as hard as it has. Blake used to be an electrifyingly versatile forward that could handle the ball and make plays like a guard, overpower opponents down in the post, dominate the pick and roll game, and even make plays for others as a strong playmaker for a forward. But at this point, he's just a total shell of himself. On the year so far, Griffin is averaging a mere 14 points, 6 rebounds, and 4 assists per game. He's been incredibly inefficient shooting the ball at 38% from the field and 31% from 3, and he's just not the aggressive force we've grown accustomed to watching anymore. There was once belief that contenders could possibly look to trade for him, but I'm not even sure who would want him and his massive contract at this point anyway. The next player having a pretty disappointing season so far this year is Lonzo Ball of the New Orleans Pelicans. It might just about be time for us to all accept the fact that Lonzo is what he is, and that he's not going to be the great player we all thought he could be. What he is right now is not bad by any means, but if anything, he's much closer to simply being a role player in a team's rotation than he is to being a genuine go-to guy in a lineup. I will say that as a perimeter defender, he has definitely impressed and established himself as one of the higher end players in that regard, but offensively, he just doesn't move the needle like we thought he would by this point in his career. He's still an inefficient, inconsistent scorer, putting up 12 points per game on 39% shooting from the field and only 31% shooting from 3. He's averaging a career low 4 assists per game, and his impact on games just isn't always felt. He seems to be more suited for a smaller role, and while he does do a fine job in that kind of role, it's still disappointing nonetheless. The next player we'll be discussing having a fairly disappointing start to the season is Pascal Siakam of the Toronto Raptors. In the post-Kawhi Leonard era of the Raptors last year, Siakam took another huge leap individually and showed the ability to handle his new role as the #1 option pretty well, but then when the playoffs came around, he got a bit exposed, and improvement was needed in regards to him expanding his arsenal of moves after what he put up in that series, particularly in half-court settings. Siakam is at his best when he can get out in transition, push the pace, and put pressure on the defense off the dribble, but when the game slows down, he becomes much easier to slow down, and especially down the stretch of games, he's been known to struggle. This year, his production across the board has taken a bit of a dip. The Raptors as a whole themselves this year find themselves near the bottom of the league standings, and Siakam has 2 very noteworthy chances to close games out that he's come up short on. He's a very good player, but the disappointment lies in him maybe not being the kind of player that can comfortably take on lead duties like the Raptors were hoping he would be. The next player we'll be discussing that has had a pretty disappointing year so far is Russell Westbrook of the Washington Wizards. Westbrook was traded this offseason for John Wall, and in turn, a large majority of fans and analysts came away under the assumption that the Wizards got the better end of the deal, but so far, it really hasn't proven to help that much with their circumstances. The Wizards still have one of the worst records in the league, 2 of their 3 wins have come in games when Westbrook didn't even play, and he just isn't the impactful player they were hoping that he could be for them. His turnovers are a huge problem as he's committing more than 5 of them per game. He's struggling mightily with efficiency, shooting 38% from the field and 30% from 3, and after many thought that they could be a dangerous playoff team with Russ playing alongside Bradley Beal, it just doesn't look like that's going to be the case. The next player we'll be discussing having a disappointing start to the year is Deandre Ayton of the Phoenix Suns. Ayton had taken incredibly promising strides as a player through his first 2 seasons, looking well on the way to becoming one of the best big men in the league after having been drafted number 1 overall back in 2018. But this year, something about him just doesn't feel right. He's been a lot more hesitant with his touches, he has not been as aggressive, and his production backs up what we're seeing from him with our eyes. His average of 12 points per game is a career low, 6 points fewer than his average from last year, and 4 points fewer from his rookie season, and the weird thing is that according to the numbers, he's still getting relatively the same amount of touches in the post and around the basket as he's always gotten. The addition of Chris Paul was supposed to make life easier for him, giving him a highly talented playmaker to set up easy buckets, but again, as I said before, he's been playing hesitant and lacks the aggressiveness that he previously had. The team has spoken about this and made it an emphasis to get him back going again, but right now he's in a spot where he needs to turn it around to help the Suns maintain their impressive start to the season. The next player we'll be discussing having a disappointing year in the early going so far is Ben Simmons of the Philadelphia 76ers. Ben is always a highly controversial figure in the NBA, and you all should know that I'm not the kind of person that harps too much on his shooting, but this year he's just simply lacked any aggression on too many occasions. In regards to his stellar defense and elite ability to make plays for those around him, he's still very much playing up to the standard he set for himself in those areas, but what's been disappointing is the fact that his hunger to score the ball, get to the free throw line, draw fouls by attacking the basket, and yes, of course, his perimeter shooting has all taken a dip when we expected it to show some steady growth. The Sixers placed their trust in him by not trading him away for James Harden, so now he's going to have to repay them by turning things up a notch for the remainder of the year. And finally, the last player we'll be discussing having a pretty disappointing season so far in the early going is Devonte Graham of the Charlotte Hornets. Graham was a breakout player last season who provided the team with reliable shot creation and playmaking in the backcourt, and he put up about 18 points per game and 7 assists as well. This year, however, his shooting ability has taken a nosedive, and he's found himself in a huge slump that has been hampering his play. He's only scoring 11 points per game so far this year, and his shooting percentages of 29% from the field and 30% from 3 rank as some of the worst in the entire league. Not only is he in the last year of his contract, entering free agency this summer, but he's also got rookie LaMelo Ball showing steady progress coming for his job as well, so he has a lot of pressure on him to turn things around quick. And with that being said, that's all I have for you today. Make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and comment down below who else you think has been disappointing so far this season. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you all next time.